Welcome to the American Railroading Podcast, brought to you by the Revolution Rail Group, live from the great state of Texas. Join us as we educate, entertain, and explore the world of American railroading. Here's your host, industry veteran, Don Walsh.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the American Railroading Podcast. I am your host, Don Walsh, President and CEO of the Revolution Rail Group. We are the anchor sponsor for the American Railroading Podcast. We provide consulting and brokering services to the railcar industry. So if you need any kind of consulting, whether it's merger and acquisition consulting, process flow analysis, market analysis, we can help you with that. We can also help you with brokering services, so buying, selling, leasing, or subleasing of railcars. You can reach out to us today at 844-455-3434 or info@therevolutionrailgroup.com. You can also check out our full suite of services on our website at therevolutionrailgroup.com. Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful and safe 4th of July and you got all your fingers and toes intact. It was a great time for me. It was a whole weekend's worth of fun stuff and with family and friends. Hopefully you did the same. And I also want to thank everybody who came up and said hello to me at the Midwest Association of Rail Shippers Conference in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in early July. That was amazing. First of all, we had a record crowd, which was great. We had wonderful speakers. So everybody at Mars, thank you again. You did a great job. And what was really neat, which I didn't expect, but was very cool, and thank you guys so much for this. Wherever I went in the meeting area, inside, outside, and I was sitting in the back of the room most of the time, you all came up and thanked me for the podcast. I had several people come up and say, hey, that's all you said. You literally walked up and waved at me and said, thank you for the podcast. I thought that was so cool. And I had another, someone come up to me and said, hey, I'm fairly new to the industry and your podcast is how I'm learning about it. So that's wonderful. So thank you. That's what we're here for. That was really the intent all along, and to give us some exposure as well than what we're doing out here in the rail industry. So thank you, everybody. Now there is an important holiday coming up in August, which is my birthday. So yeah, you don't have to send anything. Don't have to do anything. Just a little email, a little text. That's fine.
That's the coffee cup at American Railroading.
That's true. You could buy me a cup of coffee at AmericanRailroading.net. Go to our website, little yellow coffee cup. We'll get to that in a second here, but you could do that. But most importantly, today is, we're recording this episode, Producer John's birthday. So happy birthday, Producer John.
Thank you.
Yep, 21 again.
That's all right.
Yep, don't look a day older.
For the rest of the life, 21.
21.
From here on out.
I think there's a store named after you.
Oh yeah, Forever 21.
Forever 21. It's all for you. So, and thank you for all you do, birthday boy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're going to be heading off to Cold Stone Creamery down the street here afterwards and get yourself some birthday ice cream.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hit up a steakhouse somewhere tonight.
Ooh, sounds good to me. Sweet. Well, thank you to all of you. We continue to remain in the top 10% of all podcasts in the world. And that is a total blessing. And it still blows my mind to this day that we're so worldwide. We've now been downloaded in 53 countries around the world. So last episode was 52. Now we've added the Philippines. So thank you and welcome to everybody in the Philippines. We're also on 36 different podcast platforms. Apple and Spotify are number 1, number 2, neck and neck. As far as all-time downloads, the U.S. is number 1, Canada is number 2, Australia is number 3, and then for this last month, U.S. of course remains number 1 by a wide margin, like 91%. And Canada, welcome back to second place. You've been gone for a while. The Netherlands was squeezing you out for a couple of months, so welcome back. And we got the U.K. and Singapore tied for third place, so welcome Singapore to the race here. Hello again to our new friends in the Philippines, as well as our friends in Israel, Japan, and the UAE. So thank you guys for all your downloads.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and birthday boy.
Yes.
And feel free to message the podcast through info@americanrailroading.net and wish John happy birthday if you'd like to as well. If you like what you heard on the podcast, you can buy us a cup of coffee. John mentioned it earlier. And you can go to our website, AmericanRailroading.net. You'll see a little yellow coffee cup in the bottom left-hand corner. You can click on that and you can buy us 1 cup, 3 cups, 5 cups, or however many cups of coffee you'd like. It's like leaving us a tip for doing a good job. So thank you for those of you that have and those of you that will. We mentioned downloads earlier. Please continue to download, subscribe, and share and leave us reviews. So reviews really help us a lot. I know I mention that every episode, but it's so true. The more reviews, the more 5-star reviews we get, the more we get pushed out into the internet for people to find us. So it helps us a ton. So please continue to share and leave us reviews. Don't forget that we have a YouTube channel, so you can watch our videos on our YouTube channel at our website, AmericanRailroading.net, and click on the videos tab, or you can go to YouTube at American Railroading Podcast. Again, YouTube at American Railroading Podcast. And our subscriptions have grown again. It's gone up another 10% in the last month. Which,
nice.
Yeah, it's amazing to see that. And another huge number that we've noticed this month is we've had a 300% increase in downloads of all episodes in the last 30 days. So thank you guys. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for continuing to put us out there for more people to find us and learn about us. Please continue to check out our online store. So you can check out our online store. We have all kinds of cool stuff like the hats and the hoodies and T-shirts. No tank tops. Sorry, not yet anyway. No muscle shirts.
Aw.
Yeah, no, I'll work on that. But you can buy challenge coins as well. So our challenge coins, a portion of the sales of the challenge coins go toward our friends at Boots for Troops. So Boots for Troops provides care packages to our troops. Those are enlisted in U.S. Armed Forces all around the world. We also do, and I'm a chairman, so full disclosure, I'm a chairman with Boots for Troops as well on a volunteer basis. We also do scholarship programs for spouses and service dog training for our veterans. So it really helps out a ton. And you can go to AmericanRailroading.net, click on the store tab, and shop to your heart's desire. Let's see, what else have I got to tell you here? Well, with that 300% increase in audio and video downloads, that would be wonderful for a sponsor to jump on board, wouldn't it? Now, we already have one, and they've re-signed for this next year. So thank you to our friends at EnviroServe for signing up for another year of sponsorship with us. And we have room for you as well. So if you want to sign up for a sponsorship, we have our platinum sponsorship. We have our gold and silver sponsorships available as well. So if you're interested in being a sponsor of the American Railroading Podcast, please don't hesitate to contact us while spaces are limited. You can reach us at marketing@americanrailroading.net. Again, that's marketing@americanrailroading.net. So I mentioned Boots for Troops a little bit here earlier. And as you know, if you listened to our last episode, we're launching our third annual Honor Our Heroes Gift Package Award. So we're accepting nominees at this time. We have somewhere around 700,000, I believe, veterans in transportation, of which a large portion of that is rail. So, there's more than enough people for you guys to submit. I did ask for Boots for Troops today as we're recording this episode, how many submissions we've gotten so far. And it's a whopping 0. So I know we can do better than that, right? So find yourself a veteran in the industry, submit their name and information, which I'll tell you about in just a second here. And it's free. It's free to you and it's free to them. This is sponsored by Boots for Troops, so they take care of all costs. And it's an incredible package. So, it's like a care package, but it's kind of beefed up, if you will, for our veterans. So as far as next steps are concerned, for you, you get your candidate's full name and contact information, the branch of service that they were in, their rank, the rail-related company that they worked for or retired from. So it doesn't have to be a railroad. It could be anyone that's related to rail. So please send all your email submissions to Boots for Troops at info@bootsfortroops.com. Again, that's info@boots4troops.com. And then in the subject line, include American Railroading Podcast, Honor Our Heroes nominee. Again, the subject line will be American Railroading Podcast, Honor Our Heroes nominee. And we look forward to seeing your submissions. So, and we'll draw the winner in our September episode. I'm looking at having a special guest draw the winner for us this year. Every year we have somebody special draw it. Well, let's get into our subject matter for today. And it's something I think that a lot of you are interested in. I know that I get a lot of questions about this when I'm out at conferences regarding tank cars, regulatory issues and regulatory rules, not issues necessarily, but regulatory rules and compliance and how it impacts the industry. So although tank cars only make up a portion of the U.S. national fleet, they get the bulk of attention when it comes to discussions surrounding the railcar industry, partly because of the commodities that they carry, which necessitate regulations to ensure their safety. Those regulations are constantly changing and evolving. Well, my guest today is going to help us navigate through some of those regulations, discuss their importance and impact. My guest for today is a dear friend of mine who I have known for a really long time, actually since I began in the industry. I won't say how long ago that was. I was like a baby. It was some time ago. But my friend Tom DeLafosse is joining us today. He's Senior Vice President of Quality and Regulatory Compliance for Salco Products, who are based in Lamont, Illinois. Having begun his career in the railcar industry in 1975 with Union Tank Car, who we recently had on as a guest as well, by the way. He was manager of inspection services. Tom has 50 years of experience in quality assurance, design, repair, and inspection of railroad tank cars. Over his amazing career, Tom has developed numerous inspection, repair, training, and quality assurance programs. After over 20 years at Union Tank Car in 1998, Tom joined All Trans Tech, a railcar fleet management and technical services company, as director of technical services, and helped to get the newly formed company off the ground after the merger of Rescar's technical services division, Trans Tech, and fleet management company, All Trans. So I was there when this happened. We'll get to that in a minute, but I was actually there when all that took place. Prior to joining Salco Products in 2016 as Senior Vice President of Quality and Regulatory Compliance, Tom spent several years with Watco as Vice President of Engineering and Regulatory Consulting. Now, this is where it's going to get a little technical. Let's see if I can get through this without stumbling too bad. But Tom is a Certified Quality Auditor, or CQA, through the American Society of Quality. He is a member of both the Railway Supply Institute, or RSI, Quality Assurance Committee and Committee for Tank Cars, as well as an associate member of RSI's Committee on Tank Cars, or CTC. I did it. I made it through there. Didn't stumble at all. Tom has spent the last 27 years providing regulatory compliance support to railcar owners and repair shops alike, and has served on various AAR task forces over his career to help the industry meet the sometimes complicated regulatory and industry requirements. Sometimes. Oftentimes, right? Tom and his wife, Rasa, have been married for 30 years and live just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. Beautiful area. Their daughter lives in Dyer, Indiana, and his oldest sister lives in Crown Point, Indiana. Both Tom and his wife were former marathon runners, and I can attest to that. I don't know how people run marathons. I don't know how you guys did it, but now have taken on walking and hiking on the numerous nature trails located in their area, as well as enjoying some weekend golfing. Ross is a personal trainer, and when she says, let's get moving, they move. Like it or not, Tom, you got to move. So, Tom, with that, I say welcome to the American Railroading Podcast.
Thanks, Don. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, my friend. So I don't know the answer to this. I've been curious. All my guests, what made you decide to get into rail in the first place?
That's a good question. When I got out of high school, I was getting ready to get drafted, and I was expecting to go into the service, but 2 weeks before I had to make that commitment, Mr. Richard Nixon decided that he ended the draft. So then I had a choice to make. I was working at a company called Ogden Engineering in Schererville, Indiana. We made automated welding equipment, so I could actually draw the equipment. They were a lot of shipbuilders would buy darts and gantries, to put the panels of the ships together. So then I'd go out in the tool crib, I'd order the parts, and then I got to help put the machines together. So it just so happened that my uncle at the time was the chief engineer. So I took a drafting apprenticeship program. It was 2 years. And when I got done with that, Union Tank had an ad for a draftsman in the paper. So I went to go apply for it. And I got the job in 1975, and I was making $2.35 an hour. I had benefits. I had 401k. I thought I was on top of the world. So I thought, well, I'll just kind of hang out here for a while until I figure out what I want to do. And I was going to Purdue at the time. And 50 years later, here I am. I'm still in it, so it just kind of grows on you. Once a railroader, I guess always a railroader. So I've enjoyed it. Met many, many good people, yourself included, and just wonderful experiences. It's hard to believe that time has passed so fast,
Yeah, for sure. So you're a Boilermaker.
Well, yes. The whole family on our side is. My cousin's side are all Hoosiers. They're all Indiana grads. So little bit of basketball rivalry, smack talk when that kind of time comes around. But for the most part, I think it's, it's pretty civil. Put it this way, it's a lot better than political discourse that we have.
And if they're Packers fans and you're a Bears fan, that could make for some discourse as well.
Well, this is the funny one. My cousin's family was all from Oshkosh, so I started out as a Packer fan. But then, when you live in the Chicagoland area, you got to be a Bears fan. So I actually like both teams. I root for both teams. But when they play each other, you got to go with the Bears, right?
Yeah, and I'm excited about this year. So we'll see if they can make some changes.
I hope so. I like their coaching for sure. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. So we go way back, literally to when I started in the industry. And I remember when Trans Tech first started as a portion of Rescar. So for those that don't know, we discussed it in our episode with Joe Schischler Sr., which, gosh, is 2 years ago now. For those of you that haven't seen it yet, please go back. It's one of our most viewed and most downloaded episodes in our history. So please go check that out. But I remember when that began, and it was kind of like, well, what are we doing with this Transtech department, And at the time you were, I think, coming over from Union Tank Car, right?
Yes, it was.
With some other engineers. And I thought it was the coolest thing because we were this large tank car repair company, rail car repair company. We did a lot of tank car work. And bringing in that type of resource just for us internally, I thought was amazing because it helped us have an interior source for level 3 for non-destructive testing, helping us with our welding certifications and all of that. And then it turned into a service offering. And at that time, Alltrans was a customer of mine. So I was running the Rescar Chicago plant. And so Alltrans was based out of Hinsdale, Illinois. And so they were a big customer of mine for freight car repairs. And then one day I'm like, wait a minute. Transtech and Alltrans are coming together, and here we have all Transtech. It was really cool. It made a whole lot of sense, and you were a big part of that. So you want to take a minute to walk us kind of through what that was like?
Well, when we first started out, it was Andy Schaefer, myself, and Sue Schiffler. So we basically started it in 1998, October of 1998, and we couldn't give it away. So that's how it started. And we kept plugging away and trying to convince people that, with these regulation changes, there was a lot of need for a lot of support services. And, you don't want to hold a gun to their head, but it was actually, we were called, our name was Transtech Solutions. And then when we merged with Rich Vath's and Jeff Wilson's group, that's where all Transtech came from. But I would have to say that Joe Sr. was a visionary there. I mean, when bringing the fleet management and the tech services together, I mean, his long-range vision was just amazing to see how that would all come together. And over the years, it just grew momentum. And now, they're the biggest dog in the hunt,
Yeah. And I actually, when I was moving here from Chicago 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, I found my level 2 die pen certification card with your name on it. when I was 26 years old, which wasn't that long ago, of course.
Oh, no.
So I was wondering, you think it's still any good?
Well, you might want to go a little bit of refresher training, The early days of that stuff is much different than, where it is now with the ASNT level 3s, and the hours and the having the level 3, help with the written practices to determine what's appropriate, depending on what type of application you're going to make a specific method to a portion of the rail car. So, it's come a long way.
It sure has. And so it's Salco Products, actually. And that's who you're with today and have been for some time now. And I remember, I've used Salco Products for years as a shop manager, plant manager. Yeah. And I remember too, when you guys got into regulatory compliance, we'll get into that in just a minute. But what can you tell us about the history of Salco Products? What kind of brought them about? Well,
Dave Ostermeyer was the one of the owners. I think there were 4 or 5 owners total. So that was, they're 40 years old, maybe just a little bit more than that. And early on, I think Dave too had a vision on where this company could go. And he was very much, customer focused driven, right? So you get a lot of organic growth from treating your customers right. So, and Dave was a master at that. So they would take a product, improve it, and, just a better mousetrap in a lot of cases, and their business kept growing. Well, he bought his partners out, and, it went from a few $1 million a year company to, $70 or $80 million a year company. And then I think it's been about 4 years ago now that Dave decided to retire and get out of the business, and he sold the company to Stuckey. And then Stuckey was bought by Stone Canyon, which is a hedge fund on the West Coast. And then a couple of years ago, Stone Canyon sold the company to Stellex, who's a hedge fund on the East Coast. So now our owner is Stellex, and we are one Stuckey group. And it's been, getting the companies together, getting everybody on the same page. I think we're getting there. It's I think there's a lot of a growth that can still happen within the company, and I think that's what we're counting on. And it's been fun. It's been fun. Again, you come across people with different skill sets, different histories. A lot of folks on this side of the business were from the automotive industry. So educating them on the nuances of the rail industry has been a challenge, and it's also been fun. So, I look forward to seeing how far, those relationships and learning curves can take us.
Yeah. And Salco provides a number of very important services to the industry. I'll just touch on a few here. So general purpose tank car, pressure tank car, and acid tank car parts, hopper car parts for cement, sand, grain, plastic pellet, resin, carbon black, and pressure differential hopper cars, plant equipment such as mobile transloading equipment and waste fume scrubbers, which, by the way, I want to say that you guys invent a lot of this stuff. You actually design and build a lot of this stuff, which I don't know if people realize that, but you do a lot of that in-house. Also, rail yard accessories such as filters and seals, loading and unloading aids, rail yard safety, and shop supplies. So that's quite a bit of stuff. Trucking also for trucking for chemical and corrosive liquids, as well as dry bulk. Inventory management, which I've took advantage of over the years as well. And last but not least, your neck of the woods, regulatory compliance. So I remember when you guys didn't offer that at Salco, and I was there. So I had just facilitated the creation of a mobile railcar repair company for a private equity group. And we were talking to several different companies about being our level 3 and for NDT, non-destructive testing. And so I was living in Chicago at the time, so it was easy to drive over to the office in Lamont, Illinois. And so I got to meet with several folks, including Kevin and John, right? And at that time, John Pasco, I think was, and shout out to John if you're listening. I believe he was at level 2 for several disciplines at the time, but was going to school or learning to be a level 3. And I just want to give a shout out to John. He really worked his tail off. And I know a lot of people over there have, but I remember when John was just getting started. So kudos to John, kudos to your group. And you want to take a minute just to tell us about your regulatory compliance services and your team over there?
Yeah, the vice president of the group is Matt Grove. Matt Grove and I have got a long history together. We worked together at All Transtech. We worked together at Watco, and he went back to Rescar when Watco disbanded the group, and the GBW shops, they sold back to Greenbrier. So at that time, we had to make a choice. Jim Rader and I, we were either going to go to Greenbrier, and the opportunity came up right about the time that all this happened. Was Dave Ostermark called me and said, "Why don't you end your career with Salco? We'd like to have you over here." I knew a lot of people from here. I had referred a lot of customers to Salco for, various parts and things like that. I was very good friends with Alex DeGutis, and a lot of their sales guys, because you cross paths with a lot of these folks all through the industry. Excuse me. And so I think what really impressed me was I was with a client, and Dave asked me where I was, and I told him I was in South Carolina someplace. He goes, well, let's do dinner tonight. Okay. So he flew out and interviewed me, and I thought, well, that was pretty impressive if they think that much of you. And I really wasn't excited about going to a company that I didn't think really knew what we brought to the table. Because there's a lot of internal services, yourself in the facilities, that you need a quality assurance program, you need an audit, you need non-destructive testing training, you need, some type of procedure written, you need a welder certified, we can do all of that stuff, and Dave recognized that right away, so again, I look at Dave kind of like, Joe Schisler Sr., just a visionary in that regard, and it was fun. I mean, working here has been fun. There's a lot of times where the week ends and you think, man, that week went so fast, and it didn't feel like work, right? And they've always said that if you're enjoying yourself, it doesn't feel like work. So I've been blessed. I've been in my 50 years in this industry, I've been really blessed. I have to tell you, I had a wonderful 20 years at Union Tank. I enjoyed my time at Rescar and All Transtech. Met some great people at Watco, and likewise over here at Salco and Stuckey. Very, very, very fortunate. I don't know if I could script it any better that it would come out like that, but I got lucky. I rolled 7 for a change, you know?
I would say so. And I knew Dave really well, always a great guy, always very accommodating, always, pulling me inside, asking me how I was doing. He'd see me at an airport or anywhere, pull me aside, ask me how I was doing, and just talk my ear off for a while. Even though he was so successful and the big man on campus, literally a big dude, he would always make time for me. So
very generous man, very generous man with everyone.
I agree. Wonderful, wonderful man. So we'll get into A. Stuckey for just a moment. You mentioned that they're your parent company. And so this was kind of neat. I just looked up some history on them, which I didn't know about. So they were founded in 1911 by Arnold Stuckey. The company's focus has always been on engineering, reconditioning, machining, manufacturing, and maintenance of railcar and industrial parts. So Arnold Stuckey was a talented Swiss engineer who moved to America and thrived in the rail industry. His innovative side bearings design stabilized rail cars and became an industry standard. And by the 1950s, almost all North American railroad companies used Stuckey roller side bearings, which I think is really cool. I didn't know there were any other type of side bearings other than Stuckey for the longest time, right? Because they really kind of took over. So today, A. Stuckey is providing various new and reconditioned railcar parts, as well as engineering, manufacturing, and maintenance of way services to the rail industry. So you already mentioned that you're really enjoying the relationship so far and kind of how all the teams have been brought together.
Yep.
Very good. Well, hey, let's take a moment and recognize our gold sponsor, EnviroServe. EnviroServe is America's premier provider of comprehensive, reliable, effective, and eco-friendly environmental solutions for the rail industry. Their rail services include mobile railcar cleaning, flaring, interior blasting and transloading, removal and replacement of tank car service equipment, and leak testing, complete HAZ and non-HAZ waste handling, management, remediation, and disposal services, 24/7 emergency spill response, and more. To learn more, please visit their website at www.enviroserve.com. So today there's approximately 2 million registered rail cars in the U.S. national fleet. Approximately 22% of the national fleet is made up of tank cars, or about 440,000 tank cars out there. And you think there's more than that because you hear about tank cars all the time. You don't hear about much else, but it's only 22% of the national fleet, all of which are required to go through a periodic regulatory compliance inspection called HM216B. Generally speaking, every 10 years that's required for general purpose tank cars and every 5 years for pressure tank cars at the car owner's discretion. But not everyone who owns, manages, or utilizes a tank car fleet knows exactly what an HM216B qualification is, as it may show up on their invoice or estimate as one single line item. It's not broken down when it's actually a series of inspections and tests. So can you take a moment to explain to our audience what all is included in a standard tank qualification or HM216B?
Well, if anybody wanted to research the regulatory requirements, 49 CFR is really our area within the Code of Federal Regulations. And 180-509 will identify the different inspection areas that a car owner has to develop inspection intervals that identify where to inspect, how to inspect, and what's your acceptance criteria. So the rule will allow you certain non-destructive testing methods to use. You then have to apply them as the car owner on where you want to use them. And when does a discontinuity cross the line and become a defect? Those all have to be defined in your procedures. So you have structural integrity, which is basically any termination of a longitudinal fillet well along the bottom of the car. Within the bottom 4 feet. So you take the longitudinal center line, you go up 2 feet each side. So that's your bottom structural area where all the stresses go through. The buff and draft loads. The thickness readings, you have to take thickness readings throughout the tank to make sure that you haven't lost any metal below the allowed limits. When you get down to your half-life, then you have to go down to a 5-year inspection interval or possibly less. Usually, if you've got any corrosive product, you usually put a coating, which was a spray-on. The linings are usually laminated like rubber in hydrochloric acid surface, something like that. Like, for example, sulfuric acid is not corrosive to steel, but if you stick your hand in it, you're going to pull bones out, right? But, hydrochloric acid is corrosive to steel, so you want to protect the metal from having that commodity touch the steel. So you have structural integrity, you've got thickness readings throughout the tank and heads and nozzles and reap heads. And then you have Rule 80B inspections. your stub cylinder inspections, and then your service equipment. Your service equipment or any of your primary closures or any of the fittings that go on the top and bottom of the tank. Typically speaking, the maximum interval for all of this stuff is 10 years. But you have to earn those intervals through data analysis, right? So as your cars come into shop, you use that pass-fail data to determine if your car can go 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And if you're the logic of the rule was if they want you to spend your maintenance money on areas where you're having problems. So say, for example, you do your structural integrity inspections and you're not finding any problems. And I failed to mention during that structural integrity, you have transverse welds. So where your rings come together in that bottom 4 feet, you have to use a volumetric method, which would be RT or UT, to inspect the total weld, right? So if you're not having any of these defects or you're not finding any defects, you can apply for a special permit to get those inspection areas removed from your qualification maintenance plan. Now, there is some type of sampling that you have to do to make sure that it's still working, but at least you have the option to increase those inspection intervals or eliminate them for some time. So in a nutshell, linings and coatings. There's a section in the regulations that say you cannot go more than 8 years with the lining or coating unless you have empirical data or actual inspection data that justifies it going farther than that. So say, for example, if I got a rubber lining in a car and I don't have any empirical data that says that, it can last longer than 8 years, that's going to be my maximum starting interval. Okay. So when I re-inspect it, I can use that data to help drive future intervals. So the one thing I'd like to say is just to give the listeners a little context here, hydrostatic testing was the qualified inspection method that we used to put a car back in service for up to 20 years. And the reason hydrostatic testing was designed was to find leaky rivets. So in 1950-ish area, early 50s, we went to fusion welding of tanks. So between 1950 and 1998, when HM201 came into effect, implementing all these qualification requirements, you basically had hydrostatic testing. So if you fill it with water, if it was a non-insulated, non-jacketed car, you held it for 10 minutes and you looked for a water leak. So if it was a jacketed insulated car, you held it for 20 minutes. That gave it an extra 10 minutes for the water to find a way out of the insulation and out of the jacket. Not very sophisticated. So we went basically, for those 50 years, we went to the Stone Age to the rocket ship age. And there was no happy medium in between, So now all the car owners have to scramble to come up with qualification maintenance plans. A lot of people didn't have the expertise in-house to do that. So that's where when we were at All Transtech, we developed a leased program. And then we did the ready to load specs depending on commodities and gasketing and torque values and all that type of stuff. So, several companies, ourselves included, we offer a lease option to car owners that have very small fleets or people that don't have those expertise in-house. So
I remember the hydrostatic tank test, and I remember the scramble when it was switching to HM201, and the shops were full.
They tried to, a lot of it before the AAR class cars came into play, people were downgrading their DOT class cars to take advantage of the hydrostatic tests until FRA found out about it and said, not so fast, guys. If you want to maintain that DOT classification, you're going to have to maintain it as a DOT spec car. Otherwise, it's going to go down to an AAR spec car. And your lease rates, as you probably know, are a lot less on an AAR class car than a DOT class. And what you're allowed to ship in those cars is a lot less as well. So,
yeah, big difference. So in addition to the various inspections and tests that we've talked about, and I think people are going to be blown away by how much is involved. It's not something as simple as a visual inspection, which I think some people think that it is. Now there is some visual involved, obviously, but you got like you said,
that's your starting point.
Yep. And like you said, you've got your non-destructive testing. So you've got your dye penetrant testing, your X-ray, your UT, UTT, all that's very, very involved. But there's also some variations on what needs to be done and how, based on whether, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, whether they're non-jacketed, general purpose tank cars or a jacketed general purpose tank car, or whether it's a pressure car. And I actually saw somebody trying to cut inspection ports in a pressure tank car once. That's a story for another day.
Oh, yeah.
Oops.
Yep. I've seen a few of those.
Yeah. And depending on what type of stub still design it is or what type of head brace assembly it has, they can all be different variations. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, you are. Very much so. Yeah. You have to determine the stub fill type. Typically, in 2012, we started putting inspection plates on the inboard webs of the bolster, and that listed the certificate of construction, the type of steel, thickness of steel. So you had traceability back to quote unquote the birth certificate, right? So in the tank car world, as opposed to like in marine and cargo tank highway, we have to have in any other freight car that's rolling around North America, the tank car is the only one that has a certificate of construction. So you have to get that approved through the Association of American Railroads Tank Car Committee. So once you get that birth certificate approved, saying what tank assembly, jacket assembly, stub sill type, fittings arrangement, all of that good stuff, you write the car numbers in at the bottom and you sign it, and now it becomes official. So anytime you would make any change to that, whether if it's an alteration, meaning an alteration is you keep the same DOT spec, you just change maybe a class of fitting or something like that, as opposed to a certification, or not a certification, conversion. A conversion is where you go from a DOT spec to an AAR spec. You would downgrade a car or something like that. So it gives you the option when you submit that 4-2, you also use that when you want to make changes to it. So that way you've got a paper trail of what you've done to that car throughout its 50-year life.
Yeah, as Randy Kelton, the FRA would say, paper matches car matches paper, right?
Yes.
Needs to match. And that's, as you know, and it's something we've always struggled with because there's been a lot of mom and pop shops out there. No offense to them at all, but they didn't always have the wherewithal or the knowledge, perhaps, to submit the information to the car owner when they were making changes. So when I worked for GE Rail many years ago, we would have cars go into shop thinking, because our mechanical file said it had these valves and fittings, and then it gets in there and they're like, oh, you got a blind flange at the bottom outlet valve. We had no idea, so
Sure.
Those types of updates are vital to people is all throughout the industry, regardless of what position they may have, whether they're the car owner, the shipper, the AAR, FRA.
Well, keep in mind, back when Paul Kennecom had Ken Dorsey's job at the AAR, there was a lot of stuff that was handled on an R1 to record the change as opposed to going through an alteration of the 4-2. So we went through decades of that. So I would say, when they did the investigation, the NTSB did the investigation of the East Palestine accident, they asked FRA how many cars were non-compliant, and they just basically said 100%. And that may be pretty close to true, but there was a reason behind it. That was the way we handled this stuff back then, because fit, form, and function. So if I had a Midland valve or a James Berry valve or a Durco valve or whatever, if the fit, form, and function was the same, you just recorded it on R1 and you kept that in your mechanical files, right? And you made the change and off you went, but you had a record of it. Now the R1 and the R2 got replaced with the TKID, the Tank Car Integrated Database System, where the car owners now have to update their car's mechanical information real time when it comes out of a repair shop.
Yeah, which should make a world of difference. And thank God for that. So, so is it safe to say that there's much more to an HM216B tank car qualification than a single inspection? It's not just a single inspection, and there's all kinds of variables that could influence it.
I would say that is probably the understatement of the year. Yes, because just a little history on the other side of the coin is the repair shops, right? So back probably 25, I lose track of time now that I'm older, but 25 years ago, let's say, we used to have a series of shops. An A shop was a builder, right? So if I built a car, I could do anything under that. I could assemble, I could qualify, whatever. If I was a B shop, which means I could assemble, but I couldn't build, right? So I could do something less, but not something more. If I was a C shop, now anything in the world of repair The repair shop was always considered the smart one. Hey, you know what to do on these cars. The car owner would shop the car. Hey, make sure it complies with the interchange rules. And here's what I want done to it. Well, now when HM 201 came about, it flipped the script, right? And now it put all that burden on supplying the information to the repair shops. So the repair shops had to supply the qualified people. The car owners had to provide the instructions to the repair shops. So back to the certification of facilities, it was a lot easier to look up, who was a C certified shop. I could send my car to them. Now we've revised Appendix B in the tank car manual where you have activity codes. So every type of activity you want to do on that car, if I want to do service equipment, if I want to do leak testing, if I want to do structural integrity inspections, they all have various activity codes. And depending on the activity codes and the type of work you want done, you have to go to the AAR registry, look up that shop, look at their activity codes, and then go to the either the office manual or the back Appendix A of the M1003 book to look up what those activity codes meant, or Appendix B in the tank car manual. So, and what complicates it even more is these publications they're not just free out there. You have to purchase them. So like a newbie in the business, anytime somebody comes to us, says, I want to get in the repair world, I say, well, do you have a $250,000 to spend? Because that's what it's going to take to write your QA program, get your gauges, get your manuals, train your people, hire a QA manager, send your application in. Your audit fee, depending on the amount of activity codes, could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. So some of them, it kind of scares them into reality. But, I don't want to have somebody get a couple $100,000 into the process to find out that, hey, this is way over my head. I didn't want to do this, So I owe it to them as a good steward in this industry to point the pitfalls out. I try to tell them, don't do this a little bit. If you're going to do this work and you've got customers that want you to do this work, then by all means get into it. But don't do it if you're just going to do it a little bit here, a little bit there, because you'll go broke.
Yeah. And I take it a step further and say you should always have 2 years of financial resources behind you before you even consider this, because it's going to take some time.
Absolutely.
Take some time to turn a profit. So why is HM216B so important?
Well, there's no way around it. I mean, if you own a tank car, usually the lease agreements will put financial responsibility, like for fittings and linings and coatings, on whoever's leasing that car, right? But whoever owns that asset is going to probably have a say. Like Union Tank will say, you may have financial responsibility for the fittings, but you're going to use our qualification maintenance plan when that car goes in the shop. Now, the linings and coatings are a different story because it's specific in the rule that says the owner of the lining or coating. So that could be the person leasing the car, right? And it usually is. So then they have to provide those instructions along with Union Tanks or whoever the car owner is to the repair shops for them to actually do the work, fill out the forms, and send them back to the owners. So, it gets a little bit more involved, once you're not only the financial accountability of it, but who's actually going to be quote unquote responsible for that, per the regulation. So
yeah, at the end of the day, it's about providing a safe vessel, if you will, or package from a hazmat perspective on the rails. It's necessary, really. And so It's involved, but it's really, really necessary. So let's get into the operations portion of this, because this is one of the sticking points, right? I mean, we have to get this done, but at the same time, it takes a lot of resources. So of the 440,000 tank cars registered in the United States in the U.S. national fleet, between 50 to 65,000 are due for HM216B this year in 2025, when you include the CPC 1232s that were retrofitted into DOT 117Rs. I know I'm talking over some people's heads, but a lot of you guys will get this. With that said, as of 2024, there were approximately 98 railcar repair shops in the U.S. certified to perform HM216B per the AAR. So just some simple back of the napkin math says that each shop would need to turn between 43 and 55 tank cars a month just for qualifications alone. That's not including any other backlog, any other rail cars, or if they need paint and lining or anything else. So which we know is a tall order considering they've already got a lot on their plate, and the average cycle times in getting rail cars through shops has been high at about 90 days prior to this. And there's also high labor hours on these cars. It takes a lot of man hours or labor hours to do the work. So with average cycle times throughout my career being at 90 days, I'm hearing that their cycle times right now are as much as 6 months. Now, I haven't confirmed that with railcar owners, but that was something that I heard at the Midwest Association of Rail Shippers Conference earlier this month. So in your opinion, what are some of the contributing factors to the lengthy shop cycle times the industry is experiencing?
Well, I'm not a shop guy, but like big fleet owners usually will have some agreements with like the big providers, the independents, say like Eagle Railcar, right? So they're going to get priority because they're going to guarantee so many hours, a year of labor to these people at a contracted rate, right? So the smaller fleets are the ones that really are the ones that suffer the most because it's hard to find a shop that'll take them, and then your responsibility as a car owner, you have to provide oversight of your maintenance providers to make sure that they understand your program and they implement it properly and they're filling out the paperwork properly. And then to compound that, like I mentioned earlier, the cost of certification is just exploded because of all these individual activity codes. So any other freight car, if you exceed 85 hours of work, put it this way, if you strike an arc on any rail car, you need to have a certified welder and a welding procedure, okay? And that's usually AWSD 15.1. When you get to a tank car, if you strike an arc on the tank itself, then you have to have certification to Appendix W in the tank car manual. But the certification of the facilities, has gone and gotten so expensive that it's driven a lot of people to the point where you can't find people, that are long-term employees that are going to stay with your facility. It's not like if you go to GM to get your oil change, and they're making $150 an hour. It's not that way in the tank car world, right? I mean, the margins are a lot less, your billing rates are a lot less, and it's a tough work environment. Back in the old days, you used to have people that were craftsmen that didn't want to mess with paperwork and procedures and stuff. You just, you told them what to do and they did it. Now the paper has come to the folks in the repair shops. So now they've got, like you mentioned before about NDT training, you got classroom hours, you got written tests, you got experience hours. All of that stuff is now on the burden, not only of the shop to comply with, but the technician doing the work. And very often when the AAR comes in, the Bureau of Explosives comes in to do their annual audits, they have to demonstrate those activity codes and the welding. And, it's a lot of people get nervous with that. I started to say that if you do work over 85 hours, you need a quality assurance program. And that's in the office manual, Rule 88. Okay. So whether any type of freight car. So for a technical approval, that's M1002. You cannot have a technical approval without a quality assurance approval. So you need both. You need a certification M1003 and M1002. And then there's welding codes. So all of these, Appendix B in the tank car manual, which is a purchase publication, will define all those responsibilities. And I can tell you, if a novice goes in there and starts reading Appendix B, their head swims. There's just a lot to soak in and digest, to try to understand just how you work this jigsaw puzzle, because, the Bureau of Explosives will do the audits for AAR of the tank car facilities. So let me slice this a little more. So when I do a freight car audit, say like I repair hopper cars, right? I've got a quality assurance certification. So year one, they look at all 24 elements of the M1003 program. Years 2 and 3, they only do about 8 elements. So it's, they're just spot checking you to make sure everything's still in line. And then year 4, they do all 24 elements again. Well, in the tank car world, you got a 3-year cert, but every year the audit is the same. You have to do all those demonstrations, and the cost of those audits are very high. I know Union Tank has some facilities that the audit fees are $100,000. That's just for one facility. So, when you've got a network of shops and your external audit fees are in the millions, it's paramount that you get a return on that investment, and you got to put a lot of cars through that shop, through those shops. So there's a lot of moving parts. There definitely is. It's hard to explain it all in this short conversation that we're having, but I'm always available to help try to explain this to people. We do circular letter summaries, we do all types of stuff, and we offer that free on our website. To try to educate people so they know what they're stepping into. How big a bear trap they're going to put that foot into.
Yeah. And having run shops before, there's also other variables like, when you submit an estimate to be reviewed, it may not be returned in a timely fashion. So you're having to wait on that. You're waiting on material potentially. And there's been backlogs through various manufacturers over time. And then you're waiting on disposition as well, because they don't always have a home to send it to as quickly as you'd like. So there's those variables as well. And labor is certainly a big part of it, getting qualified labor, because every repair shop I've ever seen has some other business nearby that also hires welders, whether it's a boiler company or whatever it is. There's always somebody nearby that needs them as well. And it is tough competition out there for sure.
Well, keep in mind, once these guys get these levels of certification, now it makes them more valuable, right? So now I can take my level 2 cert. If I keep my paperwork and I can prove my training, I can go to a competitor and make $1 an hour more. If I'm a certified welder, that gives you carte blanche, basically, any manufacturing facility. So it's very tough to not only choose the right people, but to incentivize them to stay, right? And that's the $64,000 question that all these repair shops suffer with, is today you might have the people, tomorrow you might not, So
yeah,
tough balls to juggle all the time, for sure.
It is challenging. And so as an option, could car owners and fleet managers utilize mobile repair operations or mini shops to help with the backlog? Would that be beneficial? Can they do an HM216B through minis and mobiles?
I think depending on the car type and stuff and location, again, you still have all the costs of the certification. Now you can run mobiles out of a facility that has all the certifications, and you can send those people, the requirement is you have to be a brick and mortar facility to hold a certification. Now you can run mobiles out and back because you have to draw your parts and materials, use your gauges and your people under that facility to do that work. But that is definitely an option, more so for service equipment, for doing a 5-year qualification of, say, like service equipment, than a full qualification. To do that in the field would be kind of tough, because now you got confined space, because you got to get somebody down inside that car to do the thickness readings and the shear wave of the girth seams and all that stuff. So that's a little more dicey, because it's a little more, the liability, obviously, putting somebody in a confined space like that, and depending on, the cleanliness, if they got the dragger abilities to test the car before they send somebody in, whole watch guy. So, a little tougher, but it can be done.
Yeah. And then too, I suppose if they found something, some heavy repairs that were needed in the inspection, then they would have to send it off to a full service shop, which would require a one-time movement approval, which can take some time to get as well.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do remember, it's hard to forget the Class E facilities. And back when those Class E facilities were around, I think it was $400 and a letter to say, please let me be a certified location. And that was all it was.
$180 and 2 pages. And it was just like the Pope blessing you, and away you went for 6 years and nobody looked at you. A quick story on that. I was on the task force. Andy Schaefer and I were on the task force to develop that. So the registration process it was kind of like picking out the 13 key elements out of the 24 in the M1003 program. So we explained what that meant to the person that was actually going to be registered, right? Well, we went to a tank car meetings, and there was some pushback by Mike Lydon, chaired Sub 1, and there was some pushback by the industry saying, well, that's too onerous. It's not too onerous to explain something, it's doing a disservice to these facilities if you don't explain it. Well, anyway, it got passed, and it turned into a ceremony as opposed to, being something that would help streamline this a little bit, So I don't know, with the new administration now, with the way they want to get rid of regulations, who knows? We might revisit it someday. I don't know.
Well, and here's a question for you that many probably don't want to hear the answer to, but tank cars, the requalification due dates is the end of that calendar year. Right?
Yes.
So with the backlog that we have, the amount of cars that are due this year is a perfect example. What happens if a tank car isn't qualified by, let's say, January 1st of 2026 that was due this year?
You got to park them. There's no way around it. You can, a lot of times when we do loader unloader training, people want to know, when we had these back when hydrostatic testing was in play, we did the tank and we did the safety valve. That was it. Okay. And then, now you got to go through these a series of events, and you can always you can load a car within test dates. So if I'm loading a car December 31st and I button it up at 11:55 p.m. and it sits in my yard for 2 months, I can ship it, I can unload it, but once it's unloaded, it can't be reloaded. So that's where it takes a smart fleet manager to be knowledgeable in these rules, and then also to be active with the independent repair shops, to see where you can get cars in. Obviously routing is big because you don't want to pay a lot of empty miles to get a car to shop, that type of stuff. You want something relatively close, and you also want a reasonable turn time. Everybody hopes for 30 days, but when you're talking 6 months, there's a big gap in between, right? So, and these cars, as we keep adding cars to the North American fleet, it's just going to get tougher on these repair shops unless they add shops. But the industry has not made it easy for people to come into this line of work because of the difficulties in the certification and the cost. Yes. And I mentioned the people.
It is significant investment for sure, and the ROI isn't what most private equity is used to. So
yes, exactly.
That definitely creates some challenges. Okay, well, let's move on to HM265. This has been a big topic of conversation here over the last year or so, right? And at a high level, and you can tell me if I get this wrong, but at a high level, it's a proposed and pending ruling from PHMSA, Pipeline Hazardous Material Safety Administration, friends of ours, who've been on the podcast before. And thank you very much for PHMSA coming on last year. It would take away the sole responsibility from the AAR Tank Car Committee for the approval of tank car certificates of construction, which you mentioned earlier, basically the birth certificate of the car, as well as shop quality assurance certifications, or M1003. So it was like 95 pages long, man. I read most of it. We didn't go through all 95 pages with our friend Eamon Patrick last year, but we went through quite a bit. And so let's start with the certificates of construction portion of HM265. Can you give a brief overview of how this would work, how this would be different than how it currently is done?
Well, the AAR wants to get out from being the delegated authority, right? They don't want to have that burden, let's say. So currently the process is, if you want to build a car, if I want to alter a car, I want to convert a car, I have to send that paperwork to Ken Dorsey, who's the head of the Tank Car Committee. And he's got a stack about 3 miles high of people asking for this or that, whether it's a new valve or a renewal of a valve, or it's some other alteration of their fleet type of stuff. And it's got to go through approval, right? So new car construction has to currently go through the Tank Car Committee for approval. Now the proposal in HM265 is we're going to remove that Tank Car Committee approval and go with a design certified engineer. Okay, so the design certified engineer would be somebody obviously with a degree in engineering. There are going to be some stipulations. It's not cast in stone yet on what those requirements are going to be for that design certified engineer, but they're going to be registered. Okay. And you can then use that registry or that list of design certified engineers to contact to, use them for approving a change you want to make to your tank car fleet. So once they sign off on it, then that's going to be that's going to be good. You're going to get rid of the tank car committee for that, and I think that's that's going to be a very big improvement. But there's a number of problems that this has. It's like they dumped everything but the kitchen sink into this rule, and they sent it out for industry comments. So the RSI committee on tank cars, the CTC group, they've met. Chlorine Institute has met, and a lot of people have come up with a lot of questions. They've submitted comments. So it's going to take a while to work through all of these, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be positive. I think it's going to be a very positive change for the industry. If I may, there's some difficulties that we have right now. So right now, U.S. facilities with quality assurance programs will then have to register with PHMSA, right? What about Canadian facilities? They've got their own registration process. Does that mean they're going to have to do both? And then we're really unsure if Transport Canada will grant reciprocity to the rulemaking, because there's a lot of conflicts with the Canadian regulations. So that's a big one. One of the ones I think everybody's looking at is, the Trump administration has that administrative order 2100B, where you got to get rid of 10 regulations before you implement one new one. So that may have a major impact. It may be very beneficial because there's a lot of stuff in here now that's very onerous, right? They ultimately want to reduce the cost on businesses, right? And burdens and costs on businesses. And then again, what limitations, if any, are the design certified engineers going to have? Is it just going to be granting design and alteration and conversions, or what's the breadth and scope of this all going to be? The big thing here is about 3 years ago, we petitioned PHMSA to redefine the definition of a tank car facility. So we had a lot of problems with AAR at the time, because there was an individual there that said every part of the manufacturing process had to be done under the roof of a certified facility. So say, for example, I made a blind flange. So if I burn that shape out of a piece of metal, a plate, if I drilled a hole in it, or if I rolled it to make a tank insert, they told us that had to be done under the roof of the certified facility. We said, you're crazy. You're gonna kill the supply chain, right? So we went to PHMSA. We challenged that. They came back and excluded all service equipment from being a tank car facility. So companies like Salco now doesn't get any visits from FRA, but yet we willingly, because we make vacuum relief valves and other instruments and things like that, we still have our, C4A, C4M, and C5 activity codes. So, but that's on the AAR side. That's on the industry side, not on the PHMSA side. So we exclude service equipment from the federal law, but what's that going to do for Appendix B and, for things other than closures, and how is all that going to get resolved? It's really a mess. And then if we establish a central database for registered design certified engineers, it's going to have to be made, available to the industry, so they can utilize that. And actually, most people aren't going to be able to have an on-site, design certified engineer, other than the builders and maybe some of the other big guys in the game, like GA and things like that. Also, once the tank car facilities become registered with PHMSA, is there going to be a database available so people can identify, right now we got the AAR registry. Are we going to keep that? Are we going to get rid of that? Is it all going to go under PHMSA? Anytime you get government involved, you can draw your own conclusions there, Also, there's no discussion on enforcement timelines. So when is this going to take effect? How is it going to take effect? Those are some very difficult things to. And then probably the biggest one is, okay, so we're going to register with PHMSA. They're going to have to make a statement that a company's quality assurance program must be compliant with some nationally recognized standard, right? Like ISO. But it can't be in addition to the BOE AAR requirements. So that's going to take some work, because I know that I talks with Ken Dorsey. He's told me that the railroads aren't going to let you out of the interchange requirements. They're going to certify these facilities. Okay, so now what are we going to create? A Pandora's box here where it's now going to be twice as expensive and twice as difficult to get certified. So, like I say, there's a lot of things ahead of us that as an industry we're trying to work through. But we've got some good people involved in a lot of these different industry, like chlorine industry and RSI and stuff that are, putting our heads together and trying to formulate those questions and getting them back, and then work through some reasonable answers to them.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you feel that this is going to be beneficial ultimately once all the bugs are ironed out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good to hear. And then as far as the shops are concerned, regarding M1003 shop quality assurance program, it's the same thing. They're going to have to report now to PHMSA. Now, in our episode with Amon Patrick with PHMSA from last year, we were kind of talking about how is that going to happen? How are these shops going to submit their information? Is it going to be electronically? Do they have to have somebody come physically to their shop? And hopefully it's going to be electronically. But I did ask if it would include the existing shops or only new shops that had to fall under this new ruling. And he said including the existing shops. So hopefully it's not too onerous of a process. But I'm hoping that you also feel that that's going to be beneficial as well.
Well, it's the $64,000 question, I would say, because right now it's expensive, it's time consuming. The Bureau of Explosives has to do these audits. They're you can get an audit pretty quickly now, whereas after COVID, we had, up to a year delay. Now the Bureau of Explosives has caught up. They've hired enough people, trained them, so you can get your audit. But, it all depends, again, with the number of activity codes and demonstrations and welding codes, how much you're going to be spending. Now, that's your external audit. Your internal audit, you got to do annually, and you got to do a management review on top of that. So there's a lot of moving parts with being a certified facility,
Oh, I know. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you did my internal audits a few times, so pretty sure I passed. Gosh, I hope I did. So, what impact do you ultimately feel that HM265 could have on the industry? And then I'll get into what PHMSA's response was. I did reach out to them here this month early.
Well, like I said, I think it's going to be, it's definitely going to speed the process up for the design certified engineer. I think that's a huge benefit to the industry. Now, what is it going to take to be a design certified engineer? I guess that's kind of up for grabs right now. Are we going to have a few of them? We're going to have a lot of them. How quickly are you going to get that register up so people can find them? When is it going to take effect? Those types of things. I think that's very much a benefit. The thing I worry about is the dual quality assurance certification, because I can't get out from under the AAR's requirements for interchange, because they're not going to let that go. It's a for-profit part of their business, right? And now is PHMSA going to accept that, or are they going to say, any nationally recognized standard? Well, if that's the case, how do I get out from under the one that AAR has? So I worry that it's going to be a very difficult lift to get out from under a dual certification of some sort,
That's interesting, and I hadn't thought about that, but that's a very good point. So we'll see where this goes. But I did talk to, or I didn't talk to, but I emailed Amon Patrick's replacement. So Amon has gone on to new adventures. He's no longer with PHMSA. So Amon, I want to thank you, if you're watching or listening, for all your efforts with PHMSA and for joining us on the podcast last year and being such a great resource for us here at the American Railroading Podcast. Now, I'm not mentioning his replacement's name at this time because I did not ask permission to do that, but I did reach out to them and they responded to me. I asked for an update on HM265 for our audience, and they stated, and I'm quoting here, they said, because HM265 is an open rulemaking, they cannot offer much detail beyond the notice. However, they can share that they continue to progress the rule for final action, taking comments that were received into consideration, as well as the priorities of the administration, which you actually mentioned as well, that the administration does have a say-so. Mm-hmm. As well. Then they also shared an update regarding HM264. So our audience is familiar, if they've been listening for a while, with HM264, the proposed rulemaking regarding shipping LNG by rail tank cars. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but I do have an answer after my 2 cents. So those of you that listened or watched before, my 2 cents comes at the end of the episode. So I will save that for the end. Okay. So are there any other new or pending regulatory items that we haven't discussed yet that you think are important for our audience to know about?
I think those are the hard ones. I mean, a lot of companies, FRA has started doing, phased audits. They want to find out who is the responsible party for your fleet, right? And then they want to review your qualification, or they want to review your training first. And then once they get past the training, then they want to review your qualification and maintenance plan to see if it complies with the rules. And then they want to look at your data. How are you using your data to justify your intervals or to set your intervals? So even though we're 25 and 27 years into these rulemakings, not many people are using data. So it's kind of remarkable. Like I said, we went from the Stone Age to the rocket age by going from hydrostatic testing to all of these qualification events. I think personally, if they would have implemented these things and said, look, these are the inspections, we're going to limit you to 10 years, you would have made a huge improvement over hydrostatic testing right off the bat. But the government, again, in their infinite wisdom, wanted to take it to the nth degree. And, I love Larry Strauss. I think the world of that man. But he's a data guy, right? I mean, he wants to see data, and I can't fault him for that. That's his, he's an engineer by trade, right? I mean, but Larry sometimes doesn't realize what a gap we have in the industry as far as knowledge, and when Larry starts talking, 99.9% of the people in the room, I mean, it's flying over their head. It's not even ruffling their hair, as many times as he's given that, speech on, using data to support your intervals, because, in aviation, I mean, prior to HM201, a group of us, industry and the Federal Railroad Administration, went out to United's maintenance facility in San Francisco. And we really looked at what they did for their mainframes and all that stuff. And it was very, very interesting, very remarkable, but there's a lot more tank cars floating around out there than they are, and a lot more owners than there are aircraft builders. So, inherently they're different, right? But the rulemaking, like for moving bulk chemicals around the world, around the country, and whether it's in a barge or a boxes, barrels, bottles, and drums, a tank car, a cargo tank cars really bear the brunt of the rules, So a lot of the paper trail and stuff that we have in tank cars, you don't have that in cargo tanks, right? The facility certifications, you don't have these activity codes and all the burden of what the tank car, owners and repair shops have to go through. So, we've tried to say, look, it's not apples to apples. I mean, what's to stop somebody from saying, look, I'm going to send my products from a tank, I'm going to put them in a cargo tank and send them down a highway, Now you got to hire drivers and all that other stuff. So it becomes more complicated, but I think you get the drift. It's not a fair playing field when it comes to regulatory stuff.
I agree. And what would you say is the most common regulatory compliance mistake that people make at tank car certified facilities?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Common mistakes.
Or the most common?
I would say, not completing the paperwork like don't, when we do audits, we don't like to see blank areas, right? So if something doesn't apply, put NA, right? Don't just ignore it. So usually fill in when you train your people, make sure that they understand, look, if it's a different type of a configuration and the form is built for all types, put NA and that type of stuff in there. But I'd say paperwork is probably the biggest thing.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Boy, you're going to put me on the spot, aren't you?
Nobody will listen to this.
The current certification process is my pet peeve because it's overly complicated. I think all these activity codes and having to demonstrate them every year. If you can take a snapshot in years 2 and 3 of a quality assurance program compliance for M1003, why can't you, if somebody's got 10 activity codes, why can't you take 3 or 4 in years 2 and years 3 and reduce the cost of those audits? And then in years 1 and 4, okay, you got to take it on the chin. But I think that's my biggest frustration is it's not a fair playing field for a tank car facility.
Yeah. And what would you say that we're doing right as a tank car industry as a whole, and what can we do better?
I do think we're having a lot less non-accident releases. I would like to see more openness for design changes than we have had. I think we're a reactive industry and not proactive. As you know, the biggest source of non-accident releases has been manways, right? The hinged and bolted manway. But yet, year after year, hinged and bolted manways, we harp on those loaders. Don't use an air impact. Don't type it down. Don't, run them all the way down and warp the covers, because now you're going to cut the gaskets or you're going to warp the cover. You're going to destroy the eye bolts. And, people try to get cars buttoned up and moved. And if you don't stay on some of these people to follow your standard operating procedure, you end up with problems. It's just like, accountability, right? I mean, doing spot checks on people doing the work for you, making sure that they're doing what they say they're doing. And that's the whole purpose of an audit, right? Plan, do, check, act, right? So your procedure says this and you're doing that. Why? Why are you doing that? So those process audits are key to making sure that, people stay on track, right? So, but there's a lot of room for improvement there,
Yeah, that's also why it's so important to make sure there's 2 sets of signatures or initials on every line item.
Yes,
on a work
exactly.
Order. Make sure somebody knew that you not only did what you did, said you were going to do, but you did it right.
Exactly.
So we talked earlier about Joe Schischler Sr., the founder of railcar and All Trans Tech. It's hard to believe it's been a year now since he left us. But I know you've got to have a good Joe Sr. story in there somewhere. So you got a story you'd want to share with us about Joe Sr.?
Well, Joe, by the time I came to railcar, in 98, I think his son was more or less running it. And, he would pop in and out and stuff. And, you'd always have very, very engaging conversations with him. He was a very personal gentleman, And like I said, just to have that vision of combining fleet management with tech services before anybody had a clue. We were trying to get the tech services off the ground, and here he's already looking, 4 or 5 moves ahead of us, So if he played chess, he would have been a good one. But, Joe is a sweetheart of a person. I think, he built the largest independent, service provider of rail cars. I mean, that I think speaks for itself, So just a good man, very good man.
I agree.
The world misses folks like that,
Absolutely. And he made a heck of an impact on our industry that changed it forever.
Yep.
So believe it or not, we're getting close to the end of our episode together. So what else would you like to share with our audience before we go?
I don't know that I have anything profound to tell you. I mean, I've got what do they say? A plethora of information, but most of it is, kind of like non-relevant, But I think from the standpoint of if anybody new in the industry, Uh, I have a PowerPoint presentation that kind of shows, where you go in the books to find information, where you go, various web links to get information to determine what I need. And that's really half the battle. Where do I find this information? So I guess if any of your listeners ever want to know that, just, let them contact me. I'd be more than happy to share that with them and, get them started.
And having said that, and thank you, that's very gracious of you. Having said that,
Sure.
how would people reach out to you? How can they contact you?
Well, my easiest email address is tom.delafosse, DELAFOSSE @stuckey.com. And I believe you can look us up on our Salco. My cell number and my email contact is on our webpage, as well as the compliance services menu of services and things like that we offer the industry. And I, a lot of times people are hesitant to ask questions because they don't want to ask something dumb, right? If you don't know, you don't know. And even though I've been in this industry 50 years, every day I come across something that I learn, right? So when you stop learning, you're done. So don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's to myself or anybody else in the industry, because I think that's the only way you're going to learn. And if you're thinking about getting into this business of owning a tank car or repairing a tank car, do your homework, because there's a heck of a lot of responsibilities of a car owner, and there's a heck of a lot of responsibilities as a maintenance provider. So I would just offer that to anybody interested in that.
Well said, and I agree completely. Will you be attending the AR Tank Car Committee meetings in Dallas in October?
Yes, I will.
All right.
Yes,
So somebody wants to meet you in person and say, hey, I heard you on the American Railroading Podcast.
There you go. I'll actually hang out in your booth and we'll catch up a little bit. I owe you a few cups of coffee, I think.
I do like coffee.
I do as well.
Well, would you like to join us again on a future episode, my friend?
If I've got something that you think I can add value to, absolutely. It's been a fun hour. I really enjoyed it.
Very good. And thank you. I want to say personally, thank you for being a mentor of mine throughout my entire career. You've always been somebody I can lean on and always gave me just incredible information. And I've always appreciated that in our friendship. So thank you.
Pleasure. Same goes right back to you, Don.
Thank you, my friend. And we're going to move on now to my 2 cents. So don't go anywhere. So regulations can seem overwhelming, and they can certainly evoke all kinds of emotions. And I laughed when I wrote this because it is so true. I've seen the gamut of emotions run when somebody says the FRA is here or the AR just showed up. And responses from people can vary. But at the end of the day, they're meant to ensure improved quality and safety. And there's a lot of them out there, right? A lot of regulations. But a wise mentor of mine, and actually Tom just touched on this, Joe Schisler Sr. once told me, don't try to remember everything, just know where to find it. And that is so important, especially as a young person in the industry or somebody new to the industry. Be a sponge, absorb as much as you can, but know where to find it. And quite frankly, when an auditor does come, they're going to let you find the information that you need to do your job. So don't get nervous. Just know where to find it. And remember that regulatory agencies are resources. So if you don't understand something, reach out to them. And at the end of the day, we're all in this together with the common goals of better, faster, and safer. And that's my 2 cents. So I said I would touch on the PHMSA update regarding HM264, and I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, I had told you what my theory was, and I was correct. So, and I won't get into all the detail here to bore you guys, but essentially HM264 was the potential, it was a ruling, actually. It was a ruling under the previous Trump administration that allowed the shipping of LNG by tank car, rail tank car. And that got put on hold during the last administration, previous administration, because there was a lawsuit brought against them by some folks that said, hey, we don't know that you did your due diligence to ensure that it was safe to ship LNG in this manner. So the judge had ruled that the plaintiff, I guess, was correct, and that there was not proper due diligence done, and therefore it was an environmental impact study apparently that needed to be done that either wasn't done or wasn't done to their liking. So the judge has ruled that HM264 is no longer valid. So it isn't that it just goes back to, hey, let's redo this. It's completely gone. It no longer exists whatsoever. And PHMSA, I asked them directly, do you plan on revisiting this? And the answer was no. So for the time being, this is a dead issue, which really sucks for my friends that ship LNG by truck that wanted to start doing it in tank cars to save themselves some money. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Not to say that PHMSA won't reconsider, but it's going to take, I think, a lot of voices to encourage that to happen. But at this time, it's not moving forward. Now, however, having said that, you can still ship LNG in an ISO container on a flat car with FRA approval. So you still have to go to the FRA and ask permission to do that. And it'll be up to them whether they grant that or not, but it is possible to still do that. Our third annual Honor Heroes Award nominations, again, are open. So please, 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 I know you know a veteran in the rail industry. And again, they don't have to work for a railroad. They can work for anyone, whether it's a fleet manager, a parts supplier, somebody at Salco, somebody at Stuckey. Doesn't matter. They're in the rail industry in some aspect. If they're a veteran, please submit their name to us. We want to give them that Honor Heroes Award. It's a wonderful care package that I actually pack myself. So the Boots for Troops organization is based here in Tomball, Texas. So I actually drive out to their office and I get to pick from all the shelves and add all the goodies in there myself. And if you ever received a care package, whether you were in college and got one or whatever, it's very similar to that. It does include a new pair of boots of your choosing, new shoes of your choosing, and all kinds of goodies. So even if you're a White Sox fan, I guess we'll throw that stuff in there. Even if you're a Packers fan, we'll find you some cheese to throw in the care package and hopefully a Bears victory. But we'll make sure it's tailored specifically to the winner. And again, it is free. So what we need you to do if you're going to nominate someone is to include the candidate's full name and contact information, their branch of service, their rank, the rail-related company that they worked for or retired from, and what makes them a hero to you. Again, that is my favorite part of that, is reading that section of what makes them a hero to you. And it always brings a tear to my eye. And you can email all that information to info@bootsfortroops.com. Again, info@boots, the number 4, troops.com. And the subject line, please have it say American Railroading Podcast, Honor Our Heroes nominee. Again, American Railroading Podcast, Honor Our Heroes nominee. And we'll draw the winner in our September episode, which isn't that far away anymore. It's crazy to think that we're almost in August. By the time this airs, we will darn near be in August. I want to again thank our anchor sponsor, the Revolution Rail Group. So again, we're a consulting and brokering firm in the railcar industry. So if you're needing any kind of consulting services, whether it's merger and acquisition consulting, process flow analysis, market analysis, or anything I haven't even thought of yet, reach out to us at 844-455-3434. Also brokering and leasing and subleasing, we can do that for you as well. You can reach out to us again at 844-455-3434 or info@therevolutionrailgroup.com. You can also check out our full suite of services on our website at therevolutionrailgroup.com. So with that, I say God bless, make it a great day, and happy birthday, producer John.
Happy birthday, John.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, listeners. Keep listening. Let's get up more plays than we've ever had this month.
That's right.
That'll be my birthday present.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to see a 400% increase in downloads this month. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us on the American Railroading Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. And if you have a topic you'd like us to cover on a future episode or want to support or sponsor the show, please visit our website at AmericanRailroading.net. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on the American Railroading Podcast.